And welcome in Mark Jacobs.
Good morning. Joining us this morning is Curtis Nightengale. He's the superintendent of schools for the Nickerson South Hutchinson School District. Good morning.
Good morning.
So let's look at some things that have popped up on the old Facebook timeline about Nickerson School District.
Okay.
Eric Sidebottom.
Yeah. Our district band director was nominated as the Kansas Department or Kansas Teachers of the Year for the 2026 year, and we had a banquet Saturday night in Salina and went down there for that. So that was a good time.
So, tell me a little bit more about Mr. Sidebottom.
Well, he runs our band program, and he does it at all the buildings with the exception of South Hutch, and just in the time I've been here, I've just seen that band grow and grow, and they've had a really good festival season this year, straight ones everywhere they've gone, and so he just does a great job with the kids, and the way he manages his program, and just the excellence that he brings to the table is why he was nominated as the Teacher of the Year.
So, some people want to say, you see a lot of arts and music and all that cut. Your program is growing. Is that a correlation to the students in that program and doing better in other areas of their academics, or do you really know?
I think the things go hand in hand. I think sometimes when you try to make that correlation, it's related to, students that are heavily involved in a lot of things are oftentimes also involved in music because that's something that they enjoy. And I know when I was in school, I was involved in music and the musical and those types of things. And so I just think those kids that are heavily involved in things are usually very successful academically. And because of that, or in light of it, they are involved in everything, and so in school, music's a big part of that day.
We talked a little bit before we came in here about Challenge Awards. Can you tell me a little bit more about them? Because I noticed that Nickerson Elementary School and Reno Valley Middle School both were issued a Challenge Award or given a Challenge Award.
Yeah, the Kansas Department of Education recognizes schools that have shown growth in their state assessment rankings. Primarily, they focus on those marginal areas where sometimes there are gaps between students of low socioeconomic status as compared to students that are not, or maybe English as a second language students compared to those that are not, type of thing, and gaps can begin to develop there. And so the state recognizes schools that do well at state assessment, and they also recognize schools that do well by closing those gaps.
Okay, so basically it's a good job for the district that they're trying to they're getting their academics and all that brought up, and the disparity between the top and the bottom is not as great as what it used to be.
It is. That's been our focus for the last 3 years. That's really been our focus. I know as a board, we met with staff and the school board, and we identified that as being our focus for improvement. And so this Challenge Award is maybe a step in that direction to show that we're moving in the right direction.
All right. Take a look at the one last reward that I noticed. Nickerson High School received a All-Star High School Award.
Yeah.
Talk about that a little bit.
So the High School All-Star Award basically recognizes high schools that are doing a great job of getting students ready for that next level after high school. And so basically they look at metrics that include the percentage of students that are completing the FAFSA, percentage of students that are applying for college, the percentage of students that are being accepted into college, students that are accepting scholarships. And so they just run all those numbers, and we received that award this year, so we'll get a nice banner to hang in the building and just a little bit of recognition. So,
all right. I took a peek at the school board agenda for tonight. One of the items I noticed was enrollment. How's the enrollment process for next school year going over there?
Well, and that's one of those new that's that new open enrollment law that says we have to publish on the website the number of seats we have available for open enrollment, meaning students from anywhere can apply in the Nickerson School District. And so what you're seeing on there is literally just our posting of that. But I would tell you, to answer your question, based on our enrollment, like every other school district in Reno County, we're all seeing a slow decline of number of enrollment students coming in. There's a lot of different factors. The birth rate's down. After the pandemic, a lot of families moved toward virtual school or homeschooling.
Right.
And so as we see that number grow, obviously those kids come out of our rosters as well.
So open enrollment, of course, it's pretty much set as a lottery by the legislature. What about returning students for next year? Is there an enrollment process? Has that started, or is that something that happens later on this summer?
Well, there's a soft enrollment piece, and that is students that are currently in our system. We begin setting up what our class sections will look like for next year. Some of those kids are involved in pre-enrollment with the counselors at the schools to determine how many students we've got that are interested in taking Spanish 2, or how many are going to take Algebra 2, or how many need physics and those types of things, so we can set our sections. The actual hard enrollment then is in August when students come back in. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but in terms of the open enrollment, technically there's only a lottery if you have a finite number of seats available. So let's say, for example, if I've got in 5th grade, maybe I've only got 6 seats available at one of my buildings, and we had 7 students that enrolled to attend that grade level at that school, then we would be forced into a lottery situation. Otherwise, if I've got 5 openings and 4 kids enroll, all 4 are going to be there, and there's no lottery involved. But in terms of returning students, if you've been an open enrollment student and you were in our district last year, the expectation is you'll be back in our district this year. They're not required to re-enroll, and they have to go back through any type of a selection process.
So that basically, once they're in your numbers, they stay in your numbers until they leave.
And that can be a couple of ways. That can be they choose to leave, they want to go back to their neighborhood school for whatever reason, and or if they become a student not in good standing and they're not welcome back based on behavior, attendance, those types of things.
All right, we talked a little bit about federal cuts, and you brought that up a little bit. And so, what can you tell me about cuts to programs at the district?
Well, I think a little bit. That's a huge topic. I would tell you that there's a lot of disinformation out there, and I use that word intentionally because the difference between misinformation and disinformation. There's just a lot of dishonest information floating around out there. I think my favorite one is the fact that before the Department of Education was created, the U.S. ranked number 1 in the world, and now we rank 30th. Well, there's a couple of problems with that. First off, in 1980, there was no international ranking. That didn't start happening until 2000. Secondly, in international ranking, there's not a standardized test across the world, so that's kind of ridiculous as well. And third, in 2000, when they started that PISA test, there were only 30 countries, and so that's why they like to conveniently rank us at 30th, but actually there's 81 countries that take a part in that. So there's a lot of disinformation involved in some of that. But I would tell you from the federal perspective, the main purpose of the Department of Education, they don't select curriculum. The states do that. They don't select how much teachers get paid because the states do that, et cetera. Basically, what the feds do is they ensure compliance with IDEA, which is for special education students. They ensure that Title IX is enforced, and they're also the arm where federal dollars for federal grants and title money and at-risk money, that's where that flows through. Now, if there are some issues related to finances, with when you talk about DOGE now, if there's some issues where the money's not getting through to the states, and I hear that a lot as well, again, with so much disinformation, I just don't know what to believe and not to believe, but I think that maybe needs to be addressed. But just to shut down the entire system, our current administration's going to have to figure out a way to do those other things, and now they're talking about a federal voucher program across the country, and I mean, that opens up a whole other can of worms in terms of what the requirements are private schools are not required to meet, that public schools have to meet in terms of accepting those IDEA students, et cetera. And so it's just a huge can of worms, and there's a lot of emotion wrapped up in it. But in terms of what districts locally are seeing, our issue becomes some of our grants, some of the federal dollars we expect to get have been put on hold while they're trying to figure out how much abuse is taking place or whatever you want to phrase that as they're trying to determine, making sure all the money's flowing through and getting where it needs to be.
All right, we're with USD 309 Superintendent Curtis Nightengale. We'll be back with more right after this break. Welcome back. We're with Curtis Nightengale. He's the superintendent of USD 309.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, easy for me to say. You said you had the results for the PISAT tests, or?
Yeah, so I was just, since we were sitting here talking about it, I was thinking, that test is given every 3 years, and a lot of the other countries that we're compared with, they actually prepare for that test. They have the students practice taking it, and they set their curriculum around it, et cetera. That's kind of a big deal, and obviously in our country, that's not our focus, and so we don't spend a lot of time on that. However, when we did take it last in 2022, the U.S. ranked 9th in reading, 13th in science, and 28th in math out of 81 countries. And so, but when you think about that, when you compare those countries, you think about some of those countries that rank in the top 5, they're the size of some of our states. And so if you'll think about that in terms of how their curriculum can be controlled because they're smaller, and they can prepare those students to take just that test, and that's their sole focus, for us to still rank 9th and 13th and 28th out of 81 countries, I think says quite a bit about it. And then, there's a lot of conversation about the cost of education in the United States. Well, again, look at our size compared. I mean, if you're going to compare our cost to teach students versus what it costs in Sweden or what it costs, we're a much larger country. So yeah, it's going to cost more. So.
You have a lot more. We have a lot more students here. It is almost May, end of the year. Graduation plans, graduation. What can you tell me about end of the year at in the Nickerson School District?
Yeah, so on May 3rd is our Central State Academy. Our virtual high school graduation is on May 3rd. And then the following Saturday on the 10th, our high school, Nickerson High School's graduation is on the 10th. And I think CSA's is at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the high school's is at 11 o'clock in the morning. So always a great turnout for both of those graduations, and we're looking forward to it.
Where are those graduations being held at?
So Central State Academy's graduation is always held at our district office, and that's out up by Fun Valley there at 4501 West 4th. And then the high school, obviously, is at the high school in the gym.
All right. Any other things you want to talk about or discuss, or anything coming up in the Nickerson School District you want to let people know about?
Just beautiful weather, and we're looking forward to turning it loose here. So,
all right. I thank you for coming in, and taking the time out of your busy Monday morning to talk with us. We'll be back with BW News right after this break.